The seedy carnival looks like just the thing to give Buffy and her best buds, Xander and Willow, a break from staking bloodsuckers. Some greasy food, a few cheap thrills, what more could a slayer ask for? But then Buffy senses something evil behind this carnival. Xander and Willow aren't so sure. They don't buy Buffy's notion that the carnies are somehow connected to the corpses turning up around Sunnydale. It doesn't help that her two best friends are each interested in someone at the carnival, which puts the burden of proof on Buffy. Can she find what's going on in time to save her friends? Or has the Slayer become the prey?
We're literary.
To read makes our speaking English good.
What corpse is turning up around Sunnydale? There aren't any corpses. The second Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in novel is Coyote Moon by John Vornholt. As far as I can tell anyway, there is a bit of confusion in the matter. First, is it the second, third, or fourth book? If you look at what's printed on the books themselves, Halloween Reign is the first book, followed by Coyote Moon, and then Night of the Living Rerun. If you look at Amazon, they count a novelization of the movie as the first book, call Halloween Reign Book 2, Coyote Moon Book 3, and Night of the Living Rerun Book 4. However, if you look at the order that it was actually published, it goes novelization, Halloween Reign, Night of the Living Rerun, and then Coyote Moon. Having read Halloween Reign and Coyote Moon, and having read the summary of Night of the Living Rerun, I suspect they were all written around the same time, shortly after Season 1, and then had their releases staggered out. I think Coyote Moon is the second of the original novels, and for whatever reason, they released it after Night of the Living Rerun, but indicated the correct order on the books themselves. The other ambiguity concerns who actually wrote the book. The book itself indicates John Vornholt as the author, but the book's publisher, Amazon, and Google Books indicate that the author is instead Esther Friesner, who, as a feminist fantasy author, is not implausible as a Buffy author. However, as far as I can tell, she had nothing to do with the book. Friesner did not take credit for Coyote Moon, while Vornholt did, so I'm going with him as the author. Coyote Moon is a loose homage to the 1941 film The Wolfman, as well as featuring Native American folklore, being set in a creepy carnival, and being a western. It's an ambitious collection of elements that don't quite mesh, but still a pretty fun adventure with some surprisingly edgy and even kinky moments. It seems like the Buffy tie-in authors encountered fewer restrictions than did the TV writers in producing a show for the family-friendly WB network. While Halloween Reign portrayed the teenagers as more childish than mature, Coyote Moon appreciates the sexual awakening aspect of growing up and leans a little on that side. Published on October 5th, 1998, Coyote Moon repeats Halloween Reign's problem of having been written before Season 2 established things that made it non-canon the moment it was released. It takes place during the gap between Seasons 1 and 2, and presumes that Buffy stuck around in Sunnydale, and that there would have been vampires and other supernatural events during that time. Which makes perfect sense. While the book never mentions the Wolfman by name, the homage is recognizable to me as a fan. Vornholt is clearly a fan of classic horror, references a number of horror films in the text, including the Wolfman, and he alludes to the Wolfman enough that I feel confident asserting Coyote Moon as an homage. The sleepy German/English/Welsh town of the movie, threatened by werewolves when the wolfsbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright, becomes Sunnydale, threatened by skinwalkers in August when the Coyote Moon is bright. The Coyote Moon being a blue moon in August that rises red. As far as I can tell, Vornholt made it up. The Romani traveling carnival that brings classic European lycanthropy to the small European town becomes an American traveling carnival with a Native American threat considered equivalent to European lycanthropy. These American carnies are skinwalkers, evil magic practitioners from Navajo folklore who have the power to transform themselves into animals. Typically coyotes, as is a reflection of the malicious trickster coyote, but they can be all sorts of things, including owls, wolves, and bears. What a skinwalker really is a perverse version of a Navajo medicine person. They take the goodly Navajo spirituality and twist it into something profane, doing evil versions of spiritual acts, for malice instead of benevolence. It's the Navajo equivalent of Satan worship with an upside-down cross, emphasizing that it's about goodly spirituality that has been perverted. Skinwalkers are as tied to traditional Navajo culture as Satan worshippers are tied to Christianity. Unfortunately, even though it makes about as much sense as having The Exorcist without Christianity, there are no Native Americans or elements of Native culture in this book, besides a brief mention in the Skinwalker's backstory.
There's just one little thing that might throw this off just a smidge.
What?
I'm not a Navajo!
Coyote Moon skinwalkers are whitewashed, white villains for our white heroes to face. They are also cowboys. Buffy functions as a white hat sheriff figure, facing off against lawless cowboys riding into town. Yeah. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say that the skinwalkers were originally evil Native American carnies to fit the role of the, if not evil, alarming Romani troupe. And Vornholt decided that Buffy versus Native Americans was a perfect dynamic for a Western, and he kinda shoehorned that in. And then someone pointed out that the white cowboys versus evil natives trope was outdated and racist, so Vornholt rewrote them as evil white cowboys who stole goodly magic from good Native Americans, appropriately depicting the evils of cowboy colonialism, but in a way that introduces the cultural appropriation problem of depicting native folklore without natives. I personally think that having evil natives can work if they're evil in native folklore. Like you could say, skinwalkers menace goodly Navajos, and now they're going after the Scoobies, and the Navajos would be happy with them gone. I think it could work if the book would emphasize that there are good Navajos with descriptions of the goodly spirituality that the skinwalkers pervert, by having a heroic Native American character, or by having a skinwalker turn traitor and discuss his roots. What we ended up with, however, is a whitewashed group of skinwalker cowboys. Let's see how Buffy deals with them, shall we? The book opens with Buffy, Xander, and Willow leaving an unsatisfying concert at the Bronze to the sound of howling coyotes. The three of them banter, and it's immediately clear that Vornholt has a much better grasp on their dialogue and psychologies than did the authors of Halloween Reign. The characters are framed much more respectfully. They make movie references because they love movies, not out of some inscrutable need to quote obscure things, instead of studying like good little children. Buffy and Xander poking fun at Bela Lugosi's performance in Dracula is delightful. There's a sense of them still having the awkward crushes, where Willow's into Xander and Xander's into Buffy, but they're kind of willing to move on, if not entirely, which is probably a good way to take the end of Season 1, Episode 12 Prophecy Girl, while under the tie-in novel restriction of being unable to progress the serial drama. Nothing can happen in the book that would threaten the status quo. This restriction shows up in an element where Xander grows a mustache. It's a character development that makes us picture him differently, and it emphasizes that the book follows the episodes we saw, coming after Prophecy Girl. But of course, he probably wouldn't have had a mustache in Season 2, as indeed he didn't. So Willow and Buffy have to not like the look and lead him to shave it off between the end of the book and the beginning of Season 2. Given the book's immediate non-canon status, I honestly wish that Vornholt let him keep it and just make him an alternate universe Xander. Also, Xander wants the mustache so he can look like Johnny Depp, which these days is about as awkward as movie script Buffy wanting to marry Charlie Sheen. Speaking of a movie, Coyote Moon sees the triumphant return of menstruation superpowers.
My secret weapon is PMS.
Buffy's cramps are back, functioning the same as Spider-Man's Spidey sense.
My spider sense is tingling.
Presumably thanks to looser restrictions in the novels than the TV show. Vornholt expands on the power by saying that the cramps are for average strength villains, and more menstruation effects occur with more powerful villains. We get more frank discussion of menstruation in this book than on any episode of the show, which is pretty fun. Shades of what Carmilla would eventually do in 2014. Respect for all of what girls go through is important for feminism. When they run into a group of coyotes, Buffy's cramps warn her that there is something more to them than mere animals searching for water. She is especially wary of an old coyote with wise-looking yellow eyes. She gets the full menstruation whirlwind from looking at him. The coyotes then leave in a manner that she compares to bandits from a John Wayne film. That's pretty much how this book handles the Western theme. Characters compare things that happen to tropes in Westerns. Imagine if Firefly was filled with characters saying, "Say, Mal, you look like a cowboy. Inara, you're like our saloon girl. Mal, this is like the Battle of Gettysburg." It's really lazy. A standard creepy carnival comes to town, finally giving the bored teenagers something to do. They have a good time enjoying the midway and find their eyes drawn to sexy carnies. Buffy lets Willow and Xander flirt with a couple carnies, Lonnie and Rose, while she distances herself because she knows she can't afford to date anyone as the Slayer. Essentially continuing the message of Season 1, Episode 5, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, without interpreting Prophecy Girl as implying that she and Angel are now an item. Buffy dismisses Angel as a potential love interest because the vampire thing makes him weird. Okay. More Angel smoochies for Giles. With the promise of a kiss, Rose gets Xander to waste his money trying to dunk a mean clown. This clown is super obnoxious, sexist and macho. After the clown angers Buffy, she asks to throw Xander's last ball, and uses her Slayer powers to nail the target and teach him a lesson. It's a fun scene true to the feminist spirit of the show. Logic would dictate that Rose kiss Buffy, but she tells Xander to meet her later. The same basic thing happens with Lonnie running another game. He flirts with Willow, she loses, and he still tells her to meet him again later. Being horny teenagers, they don't think it through and accept. The role of the sexy lure is not one typically taken by either skinwalkers or werewolves, Trick or Treat being a rare example of the latter. Though the werewolf is at least traditionally sexy, I actually think that this change is fine for Buffy. Buffy is a sexy show with sexy villains. Even the sexy vampire thing is relatively recent. You know, skinwalkers aren't mythology, they're folklore, open to retelling, and sometimes incorporating other stories into them. Sometimes the retelling is problematic, but I don't think so in this case because of the context of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show.